Hello, wonderful people of the internet. My name is Matthew. Welcome to Matthew Talks About American Literature and More. Today, I'm going to be giving you a quick recap of all the books that I have finished in February. And I'll also be doing the books that I've read in January. I'll be doing these monthly reading recaps, giving you an idea of what I'm reading, what I'm about to read, and what I enjoyed. So, time to consult the postcard. I use this as a bookmark where I write down every book that I've read and make certain markers of where I started the year. This is how many books I've read and what I've ticked off my list. So let's get started. The first book I've read this year, I did a review of it, was The Big Rock Candy Mountain by Wallace Stegner. In the short, this book follows Elsa and Bob Mason, a married couple, and their two sons, Chet and Bruce, as they travel all across America with Bo Mason's futile attempts to live the American dream. He's essentially an anti-hero, a good man at heart, but his love for himself, this love for this desire to have more, to be this greater man, for as hardworking as he is, ultimately doesn't work out, and he basically ruins the life of his family, causing them a lot of pain, taking away a lot of potential happiness. I really did enjoy this book. I'm going to be reading more Wallace Stegner pretty soon. It is very episodic because it's such a sweeping thing. You do get a little too much detail for my preference, but I really cared about these characters. These were incredibly engaging. They reminded me of people in my own life, which is always a great sign. And there are some things in the end that I won't spoil, but there were parts in this book that I got so emotional that I cried like a baby. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. Sorry. And I had to go hug my mom, just thinking about it. So, highly recommend this book. I don't think enough people read Wallace Stegner and this book in particular. So, if you come across it at a bookstore, get it immediately. It's worth a read. My second book is Warlock by Oakley Hall. I also did a review of this book, which you can see on my channel. And what intrigued me is that this is a retelling of the Wyatt Earp story with a character named Clay Blaisdell, who's a stand-in, but there's a lot of other stand-ins for a lot of other characters. If you read this book, I'd suggest you go on Wikipedia and you will see the parallels with the real-life story. One of the things that also intrigued me is that there's a blurb by Thomas Pynchon who says this is one of his favorite novels. I haven't read any Pynchon, but I'm intrigued. And I gotta say that this novel was really good. It's almost a deconstruction of the American mythology, with Clay Blaisdell seen as this mythical, incorruptible hero type character. And there's many other subversions of tropes, like the big evil Western guy, the poor ranch hand, the local prostitute, the local angel of the town, the good-natured woman, the drunk judge, the put-upon sheriff. All those types of tropes are deconstructed. There's great characters in here. There's great character drama. I do think it is a little too town-focused. The drama is more based on the focus on how it means for the town than on the characters. So it doesn't hit as hard as I think it probably could have. But it does hit. There are parts in this book where I just wanted to keep reading. I was engaged the whole way. And all in all, I think this is a solid read. If you like Westerns, if you're a fan of Pynchon, if you just in general want to see a really great panoramic town story, I'd recommend checking out Warlock. It's worth a read. My third book is a book that I don't have a copy of because I returned it to the bookstore. And that's a video that I'm going to be making later. And that is Angels by Denis Johnson. This is Denis Johnson's debut novel. I've read Train Dreams and Jesus' Son, his collection of short stories. I did a review on Jesus' Son. Train Dreams I enjoyed, but I felt it kind of lost steam in the second half. And Jesus' Son are great short stories. This is his first novel, and I think you can tell. The writing style was great. He's like a minimalistic Hemingway, but there's a spiritualism to his writing. So even though in almost all of his cases, his characters are pretty horrible people. In the end, you do feel for them. I did get emotional during this book, and I was, fairly engaged the whole way. The problem is that this book basically focuses on two characters, Jamie and I forget the male character's name. I think his name is Harry. I keep forgetting. But anyway, Jamie and Harry. And basically, Jamie is a mom who left her husband. Harry's a criminal, and they basically have a kind of a budding relationship, and they go on this crime and punishment journey. And I feel that Jamie's story kind of petered off, and Harry's, while it was emotional, wasn't as interesting as I thought it could have been. They also didn't converge, so it wasn't a tight narrative. It felt too simple for its own good, and wasn't interesting enough or as in-depth enough for me to say that it justified its simplicity. It was a decent read. I wouldn't mind reading more Denis Johnson. Tree of Smoke does intrigue me. Vietnam novel, big, epic, won the National Book Award. So I'll still consider reading more Denis Johnson, but so far that book, it was decent enough for one read, but I would probably never read it again. And like I said, it's pretty forgettable. My fourth read is another book I don't have a copy of because I also returned to the bookstore, and that is Circe by Madeline Miller. This is a book that my friend Jordy really encouraged me to read. She thought I would love it, there would be no issues, and I gotta say that I was pretty disappointed. Not against contemporary literature, but it feels like that book didn't have the chance to really prove itself. It's basically a retelling of the goddess or sorceress Circe, who appears in the Odyssey and some other things, as a kind of feminist retelling as she goes through basically the cliff notes of many Greek mythological stories. And that's part of the problem, that while I'm not that versed into Greek mythology, it basically centers around her exile on an island, her becoming a witch, and her playing out her interactions with a lot of other stories that you've heard if you know a little bit about Greek mythology, or maybe you've watched some YouTube videos, and it's a retelling on her perspective. I'm not saying it was terrible. She was likable enough. There were some good character interactions and some good moments here and there. The writing was passable, but it was basically like a YA novel with some ancient style descriptions that kind of made the vibe seem ancient Greek, but it wasn't really that immersive of a writing style or a writing setting. And since it all takes place on one island, or mostly takes place on an island, it wasn't that engaging from a plot level. So, decent enough, but if you're not into contemporary literature, if you're really into Greek mythology and you want to hear a retelling, it may be worth the read, but honestly, I wouldn't spend too much time on it. It's decent, but forgettable read. Not to yank on other people's yum. I know people love this book, but not something that I would consider that great. Last one is a book that I just recently did a review for, The Landbreakers. This I really enjoyed. I liked it better than Warlock. It's a short book. It's only about 350 pages, but I loved mostly every second of this. It's not a very plot-driven work, but it's a very struggle-driven work in the sense that there's a bunch of characters, they settle this valley, and you see how they try to make their way in the world and how they try to fight against nature. Tons of great nature descriptions, immersive atmosphere. There's a lot of great animal action scenes and a lot of great set pieces regarding nature and mountains and rivers and all that stuff. And even though there's not an overarching plot, there is some great character drama among families, among neighbors, among it's not a very soap opera, but there is some love affairs, there's some will they won't they tension, there's a coming of age, there's sex, all that good stuff. It's like I said, since it's very process driven, very survival, very panoramic, it doesn't hit those unbelievable highs that you get in the best classics you've ever read, but it is definitely worth a read. So if you can get a copy of it, I suggest checking it out. My sixth and final novel, which I haven't finished, so I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's 100% fair to be included, but just to give you my thoughts on it, is Flowers for Algernon, and this is basically the story of Charlie Gordon. After an experiment on a mouse increases his intelligence, Charlie Gordon, who's a mentally retarded man, goes through this procedure and his intelligence expands, but he begins to learn some of the mistreatments that were done to him when he was mentally retarded, and how all his friends and even some of his family are not really, they don't really care about him in the way that, since he's clearly a good person, I think he deserves. I'm only on page 76, but even at that point, it already got me emotional. I'm already invested in the characters. I'm already invested in the storyline. So I'll let you know when I finish it. I'll definitely do a review, but so far, I'd say check it out. So that's about it. So hope you're all having a lovely day. Hope this video finds you well. Hope you're reading good stuff, and happy reading.